Welcome back to County Board Wrap-Up, our look at some of the key decisions the board has taken this month and how they impact you. Joining me today is County Board Chair Libby Garvey, as well as Board Member Takis Karantonis. Now, affordable housing remains a top priority for the county. Arlington continues to look for ways to preserve the affordable housing that we have and encourage development of more affordable units. Now, in October, the board discussed a controversial staff proposal to increase the income limits for families and for individuals seeking to qualify for affordable housing, specifically in developments under Columbia Pike's form-based code. Now, for those viewers who aren't familiar with the form-based code, what is it and why is it used along Columbia Pike? Takis, I'm going to throw it to you.
Yeah, Takis has been busy with the Pike for many, many years.
That's true, and I can attempt to provide you with a short explanation what the form-based code is. The form-based code is actually a zoning layer. It's a zoning ordinance that prescribes how the siting, the size, the massing, the orientation of buildings that we have entitled to be built along a major transportation corridor, and the second most populous corridor in Arlington County, which is Columbia Pike. Columbia Pike was the test field for form-based code. This has been used in other places in the United States of America, and I have to say the form-based code is not primarily about affordable housing. It is a zoning code about how we build our town. Now, on top of that, we can apply and insert other policies that align with our goals in other places, like, for example, housing affordability. And I would always use this term instead of only affordable housing, because one of the explicit goals is to create or to allow to be created housing that is appealing in different price levels to different strata of our society, from the lowest to the middle to the highest. And hasn't happened always, especially along the Pike. So the form-based code provides these tools. Now, the specific proposal that, as you well put it, was controversial and continues to be controversial, is making support available to a certain type of households that earn. Initially, they earned 60% of the area median income. So 60% of that. These are households with moderate to low income, to put it in understandable terms, to provide them support for home ownership, not for rental. Now, along Columbia Pike, we have have explicit policies, and that's also for the entire county, where we support rental at different levels. 60% is a very common AMI standard. 80% is another one. But for homeownership, which is a more difficult to attain, but more stable and more investment-intensive policy, we had also the same 60% AMI standard. And the expectation was, and continues to be, that we will be able to enable families and individuals, but mostly families, to be able to find homes that will be affordable for them to buy with our public dollar support. So increasing these levels could, under circumstances that are not so far-fetched, could actually displace people. So could make it more difficult for these families to find anything, the families that we committed initially to support, to find anything to buy or to establish themselves as homeowners in Arlington County. And instead it would shift the support to families with slightly higher or even considerably higher income. That was the point of the controversy. And I believe that the community came out, analyzed it correctly. We had a lot of time to discuss that, and we found out, I believe, and maybe our chair can also weigh in this, we found out that this is still not prime time ready. We have to think more carefully about all the policies that need to be in place in order to absolutely avoid unintended consequences, which would be in this case the displacement on 60% AMI households that still exist and live along Columbia Pike, as they also exist and live in other places in Arlington County, but we have a significantly number along Columbia Pike. So for now, the board has decided to defer this item, this policy proposal indefinitely, which means that staff, the board, the community, our advisory commissions will need to go back to the drawing board and analyze it better and make sure that we don't have the unintended consequences that I just talked about.
So we
That
have
was too long.
a slight difference of opinion in that I'm not totally sure that the staff analyzed it wrong. But clearly there was a lot of upset and concern about the unintended consequences you mentioned, Taka. So I think that's important. I totally assume that it's going to be brought into the affordable housing master plan work that we're doing now. And that's a very, it's a very appropriate place for it. We're running up against, we're running up against some realities. I think the goals of everybody are the same. I think there were differences of opinion on how to actually implement those goals and whether it's going to work up. And I think we did absolutely right to take a pause. But what we found was that people at 60% of AMI, and there's another Carver Homes area where people of that level have been able to buy homes. Almost all of them are not making it financially and are about to may lose their homes because what staff was sort of finding, trying to say is if you're at 60% of AMI, you just can't afford to buy a home. So if you're at 80%, you maybe can make it. So I think what we're going to have to do, and this is the conversation we're going to need to have as a community, does the county put in enough income to make people at 60% essentially 80%? And is that kind of support? We could do that maybe for a certain, for projects, a project here, project there, but is that a policy? How costly is that policy to make sure that people at 60% actually get the support to bring them up to 80%? That's a lot of income support. There may be other ways of doing support. I'd like us to look at something like co-op housing. I think there's some other things to look at. So that can get folded in here, but this is just a thorny issue. And it's
very complicated.
It's very complicated. And I think the one city that I hear of that has kind of solved affordable housing, a popular city, is Vienna, Austria. And that's because the city of Vienna owns almost all the housing in the city. Almost everybody lives in subsidized housing. And I was visiting a friend over there, certainly, upper middle class, well off, living in a delightful place. It was owned by the city of Vienna, and she can have it till she dies. But it's not hers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
it's a huge difference. Excuse me.
I actually used to work in the city of Vienna at some point in my life. In my paycheck, I was paying 0.5% of a housing authority, not a housing authority tax, of a public housing, social housing tax. This is one of the oldest income taxation percentages in the state of Austria. It's almost 100 years old. And what this created is it created the acquisition power for the city and for a communal non-profit acquisition entity that actually bought up about 55 to 60% of the entire stock. Now, that said, and to ground us a little bit.
Yeah, we need to get back to Arlington because I'm talking about this too.
In Vienna, 75% of the population are renters. 75% live in rented property. Only 1/3 of the entire housing stock of the city is actually private property, and it's occupied as such.
So it's a very different system and a different history, which just gets into the complexity, and this is not simple to solve, but we're going to be talking about it some more.
I was just going to say that this is obviously not an issue that will be tied up with a nifty little red bow anytime soon, so I'm sure we'll be talking about it much, much more in the future.